Salutations all. So as we get into this one today, this is a little bit busy. It's going to require quite a bit of prep work, but at the end of the day, it's going to be worth all of the effort that you put into it. First let's play the ingredients game. And some of you might know what this... Yep. No, I'm good. All right, so you might know what's in this... No, I can't. There's not enough. Oh, there are not enough different dope candles in the world. So we're gonna put this Southern tradition to the side. Oh, you know what? Let me just say something. If you have to use a half a bottle of Texas Pete on anything, don't tell me that it's good. Don't tell me that I need to try yours. It doesn't matter, okay? I've tried it. The fact that you have to wash it several times and boil it and then put aromatics in it and then cover it in Tabasco to eat it, it's wrong. It's wrong. It also brings me to this. There is not a strong enough soap in the world. If those things can be cooked multiple times and washed and soaked and you got all your granny's secrets and it still smells like that when it hits the table, don't ask. Don't ask. I'm not Tank. I'm not going there. Let's get into a real adventure. All right, y'all. All jokes aside, welcome to the new year. I hope that for everyone, this one brings you peace, prosperity, and laughter. All right, we need it after the last one that we had. So I went to the gym the other day. It's popping already. It was popping before the New Year's even rang in. I was surprised. So I want to get this one in. I should have got it in earlier, and for that I apologize. If you know me, that's how I roll sometimes. But, you know, before you all start backsliding in April on your resolutions, let's get this last one in, and then, you know, maybe in the future here we'll do some vinaigrettes, we'll look at the salads and all that stuff, and then, you know, like I said, in April when you guys get off the machines at the gym and we can get back to normal, then we'll get into the rest of that stuff. So today we're going to do a butternut squash soup. We're going to pair that with a ravioli that's been cooked in brown butter, and we're going to have some nice crispy little mushrooms to top it off. So it's a butternut squash soup with roasted mushrooms and ravioli that we're going to make. I've already got the pasta dough in the back here. It's been sitting for a little bit. We did a video on that. Please check that out on how to do the pasta. The recipe for that is very simple. It is a couple eggs, some flour, a little olive oil, and some salt. Mix it up in a bowl. It's super duper easy, but we will get that rolled out. Okay, so like I said, this one's got a lot of moving parts to it. So let's start with the soup aspect of it. So for the soup, I've got a little butternut squash. Okay, we're gonna break that down and roast it off. I've got some yellow onion, and I still have celery. My crisper drawer is strong, and like me, it doesn't let things go. So we're gonna use that up. Okay, that's the base of the soup right there. We're gonna need some mushrooms. Now these are baby portobello mushrooms. Button works just fine for this, for what we're gonna be doing. So you're gonna need some mushrooms for that. We've got some ricotta. I don't know why I have to do the hand when I do that, but I do. So this is a ricotta cheese. All right, this is a whole milk. They do have the skim version of this as well if you want to cut down on some of the fat, but I mean, why? All right, we've got some shredded Parmesan for that. Now, this is a little something that I add to mine. It's definitely not a common thing when you find in your ravioli, but Boursin cheese. Again, I don't know how to do the lights for y'all to see that proper, but Boursin cheese. If you have never had this cheese, stop cheating yourself, okay? Life is short. You don't want to get to the gates for judgment and then be like, hey man, you didn't try that cheese? And you're like, no, I didn't know. And they're like, no, you got to go. You can't be here, okay? This right here, this is like bacon, all right? You put it on anything. It's delicious, okay? Anyway, moving forward. We're going to need an egg for the filling. So we got one egg right there. Also, I'm sorry, I missed a step on our squash. A little brown sugar for that as well. Just a little bit. We're not going to use very much at all. On the seasoning side of everything, we've got garlic. Come on, man. If you didn't know by now, okay? If you don't know me, you're getting garlic somewhere. I've got some salt and pepper here, a little bay leaf. We got some cinnamon, some nutmeg. I mean, that's pretty much it, y'all. I've also got, in the back here, we've got 2 cups of vegetable stock. And I also have 2 cups of heavy cream, and that's for the soup as well. I really got to start scripting these things. So, anywho, let's get into this prep and breakdown. We're going to start off with the mushrooms. I've got the oven set at 300 degrees, very, very low temperature. I'm going to slice these up. We're going to spray them with just a little bit of vegetable spray just to coat them with a little bit of that moisture. Remember, oil acts as a conductor for heat when we're in the kitchen. It allows that heat to evenly coat something, to evenly get in there and do its job. And what we're trying to do with these mushrooms, we're going to slice them thin, hit them with a little bit of vegetable spray and a touch of salt. We're going to throw them in the oven, and essentially we're going to dehydrate them. Now, if you're fancy, like a couple of friends of mine that have a dehydrator, then fine. You do that. Use the dehydrator. We're going to do it this way. So let's get into that, and we're going to get into the breakdown of this squash as well. Okay, so let's get started with these mushrooms. Like I said, all we're going to do is slice them really thin and go ahead and cook those off. So remember, keep those fingers tucked in, y'all, if you want them for the rest of your life. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's literally it. The thinner you can get them, the better, because it'll help that drying out process move forward a little faster for you. Again, you can use, these are baby portobellos, but I mean, you can do plain button mushrooms you can find at any local grocery store. You can do morels, work really nice, though they're a little bit expensive. So it just depends on who you're trying to impress when you do this. Some other mushrooms that work really well and that are really sexy in this dish, like a lobster mushroom. Very, very sexy. So get a couple more of these bad boys sliced up. And remember, speed will come with time. Speed will come with time. And at the end of the day, you know, when you're not being pushed to produce, you really don't need to be going fast at the house, right? So again, save those fingertips. Save those fingertips. We're going to cut up a little bit more, just a hair more. And basically, again, what we're going to do is basically dehydrate these, right? I'm just trying to get them nice and crisp. And remember, we've talked in the past about fresh versus the dehydrated, right? So once we dehydrate them, then you know it's going to concentrate the flavor of that and really make it intense. It's going to have a very intense mushroom flavor. But on top of that, it's going to make an absolutely delicious, crispy little addition to this dish. So we got them on the pan there, right? We're going to hit these with just a little bit of vegetable oil, right? We don't want to drench them. We don't really want them soaking up a bunch of oil, because then they won't do what we want them to. And we're going to hit these with a touch of salt. So one thing too, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, I have this thing about people, like when you season this close, you're really not creating the most even spread on your seasoning. Season high. Get that hand up away from it so that when you're shaking out, it falls a little more evenly. All right, season high. All right, so again, got the oven set at 300. We're going to pop these bad boys in the oven. While these are in the oven, we're going to get to work on breaking down our squash and getting that diced down. Once these come out of the oven, we're going to crank that oven up to about 400 degrees, as we really want to get a nice color on our squash. So let's move forward. So butternut squash, it's relatively self-explanatory, right? Not a whole lot of crazy magic going into that. And there's a couple different ways you can get it broke down. You can take a peeler to it. If you've got a nice sturdy peeler, you can take a peeler to it. We're going to just use our knife. We're already here. So we're going to cut off the top and bottom, right? Kind of like we talked about in the past about our onion. And then I'll take that knife and literally just follow the shape of the body, right, of the squash. Once you get going, there we go, get in there. Should be able to get the rest of it off fairly simply. And again, you're going to want a nice sharp knife. If you don't feel comfortable with doing it that way, then like I said, use the peeler, especially when you get around the hips there because it curves, right? So, all right, let me get the rest of the skin off this bad boy, and then we're going to get it all diced up. All right, so we've got that butternut squash cleaned up, but I do want to go back and show, the peeler is the best, most efficient way to reduce waste, right? Now, when you're at home, you don't have somebody standing over you, literally looking into your trash can to see how much product you're throwing away. For all of my chef friends and cooks out there, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So you can see when I made that first cut off of the vegetable, I got a lot of that flesh, right? I've worked for people that would pull that out of the trash and yell at you. I mean, I know there's a lot of hungry kids in Como, but, anywho. All right, so remember, this does have seeds in it in the base part of the vegetable. Okay. All right, so we're going to start here. I'm going to cut it at the neck. About that, give you all a better view there. All right, so I'm going to start with the neck. Cut it at the neck, if that's what you want to call it, or the waist, since I said hips, since my seeds are down in here. So I'm going to get to that in just a second. Now we're going to blend this down to a smooth soup. Okay, now if you don't have a blender or an immersion blender or something like that, a food processor to help you with that, you're going to want to cut these pieces pretty doggone small, just to help with the breakdown of them as you cook them, okay? So we're just going to cube these up. Doesn't really matter what shape you cut them into. I just choose cubes because it's easier for me. And then once we've got these cut up, what I'm going to do is hit them with just a splash of olive oil and dust them with a little bit of brown sugar. And then once those mushrooms that are smelling delicious at the moment come out of the oven, we'll get this into the oven. Like I said, I'm going to crank that oven up to about 400, maybe even 425. My oven's been acting a little weird lately. And what I'm looking for is to really get a nice bit of color on this, and to caramelize them really nicely with that brown sugar. So the soup itself will be just slightly sweet, really nice and buttery, creamy, right, once we get it thickened up. And then the ravioli is going to be pure savory. I mean, that Boursin cheese, even just a small amount of it, really makes a huge difference. And then the mushrooms bring a level of earth tone and umami to the dish. So the brown sugar won't be as prevalent as you might think in doing this. All right. This is a whole lot of squash for the amount that I'm trying to get away. I've been trying to cut back on my portions and my production sizes. It's a struggle, y'all. I don't expect most to understand, but all right. So I think this is plenty. So I'm going to save this for something else. For what? I don't know, but we'll get there. So we're going to get this hit with a little bit of olive oil and just a sprinkling of brown sugar, and then get that on a pan and get it ready for the oven when these mushrooms come out. So while we wait on some of this other stuff to get to a done point, let's start working on our filling. Now, again, this is 32 ounces, right? It's 2 pounds of ricotta cheese, which is a lot for the amount that I'm actually trying to make today. The only reason I'm going to use it is, one, I don't really have another purpose for it, and two, once the ravioli is completed, it can be frozen and saved for another day. So it won't be a complete waste, okay? So we've got 32 ounces of ricotta cheese, ricotta, as Mario Batali likes to correct people and say. He would know best. All right, now we're going to go in with the Parmesan cheese. Now this is 5 ounces of Parmesan cheese. Okay, let's go right on in there with that. I'm going to probably use about half of this container. Okay. Well, that's roughly half. So that's half of my 5-ounce container of Parmesan cheese. We're going to get our delicious Boursin. Now this is a little under a half of the wheel of Boursin. I've been making grilled cheese sandwiches, I'm sorry. So we're looking at a little, maybe about a half of the actual wheel of Boursin. And I promise you that is actually more than enough to get the flavor of what we are looking for. All right. In this as well, we're going to hit it with just a pinch of salt. I do mean just a pinch, okay, of salt. Remember, Parmesan cheese has a level of saltiness to it already, so we don't want to overdo it. We can always add. We cannot take away. A sprinkling of black pepper going in there as well. We're going to mix this all together before we add our egg, right? Because we got to taste it. We don't want to put raw egg in there unless you are really into fitness or something. I think that's still a thing. I want to really make sure we get that boursin mixed in well. Okay, let's see where we are at flavor-wise. Nope, we need to go a little further. So, even with that, now for me it needs a little more salt. You can still taste the flavor of the boursin. A whole half a wheel probably would have been best to get the full flavor. But I mean, it's so delicious, you guys. The grilled cheese sandwiches are so good. Anywho, so to get where I'm wanting to go with that, I'm gonna add a little more garlic. Now this is the spoon I'm using. I don't really know what the measurement of that spoon is, okay? But that's what I'm gonna use for my garlic, right? And I'm gonna add roughly 2 of these worth of salt. I think it is a little underwhelming. All right, now let's give it a go. And this is why we taste, you know, it doesn't matter if you make something 100 times, you always want to taste. You just never know. What if the ricotta cheese was off, or, you know, bad manufacturing, or whatever the case may be. You always want to taste things as you go. Things change. All right, now let's try again. There we go. All right, so I'm going to call that a solid tablespoon of salt that I added to that. You want to use a half to maybe even 3/4 of a wheel of boursin cheese. You can find that at, I believe Walmart carries it. You know, any of your higher end Whole Foods will have that. You know, Central Market, Target, boursin cheese, absolutely delicious. Okay, now that we've got the flavors where we want, now we're going to go ahead and add our egg. And the egg acts as our binder, obviously, so that the cheese will set up nicely inside of the ravioli. It holds it all together. Okay, so that's the filling of the ravioli. Very, very simple, very, very easy, very straightforward. So now we've got that done. Let's get that set aside. And we're going to start working on our brown butter. Did I mention that before? Brown butter. What is brown butter, Lucky? It's burnt butter. All right, but there is a trick to doing it. There is a science, right? What we do is a science. It's an art. All right, so let's put this aside and let's start looking at this brown butter. All right, so we're gonna get into this brown butter. All right, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a butter that we are going to cook to a point that it becomes brown. Now, the science to this is I always start mine off a little bit slow. It's been a long time since I've done this, but I start mine off slow. If you've got a fire, you know, you got a gas stove, man, that is like the best way to go about it. It just seems like everything is better on gas. I'm trying my best to do a small amount here, but what we're going to do is slowly begin to melt this down. And as I get it melted down, I'm going to just, you know, slightly increase the heat. And what'll happen is you know, your fats, your milk solids will separate. So the little white parts will start floating around. We'll get the milk solids out of there. So it's almost like making a clarified butter, is where you cook a butter down and you separate the 2 portions of the butter, and you have a clarified butter. Now, clarified butter has a much higher smoke point, meaning that it can take a lot more heat than your average butter can before it begins to burn. And why is that? Because we're going to take those milk fats or those milk solids out of the equation. So it's going to give us the remnants. So we're going to melt this down. And then, like I said, I'll just slowly start increasing the heat as it melts down. And we will scoop out those fats. And you'll see what I mean. I know I'm not using the proper terminology, but you will see what we mean when we get there. Okay. All right, so as this butter starts to come to a boil, I wanted to show you, I've just pulled the mushrooms out of the oven. They are quite maseca. So, and as they cool, you know, they're gonna get nice and crispity crunchy for us. So I'm gonna put these aside and let's get to work on this brown butter. All right, so the butter is beginning to boil. I'll slowly simmer up, and I'm gonna start scraping off this stuff right here. Trying not to scrape the bottom of the pot if I can avoid it. Just want to get all that stuff floating to the top off. And brown butter, you know, just like clarified butter, which we'll use to make our hollandaise. I'm sure we'll get into that in one of our brunch videos or something. You can save it. So once it's made, you know, store it, put it back in the fridge, separate it, you know, use it for all kinds of other stuff while you've got it. And remember the same thing with the ravioli. I know that the amount that I'm making is more than enough for myself here, but the beautiful thing is that we can save it for another occasion. So I've pulled out those milk solids, right? As some more might float up, I'm going to grab those bad boys too. This does not work with margarine. Just FYI, you want to get straight up butter. Some of the substitute things that are out there, I don't know if that works. I'm not gonna tell you guys that that's the best way to go. This is the only way I know how to do it. If you do know of another product that can be used, you know, for my vegans, vegetarians, those people out there, by all means, let me know. Uh-oh, well, let's not start a fire, huh? All right, so at this point, we're going to let it do its thing. I should have used a small burner. We're going to let it do its thing. And like I said, if you see any more of the little whitey parts float up to the top, we'll pull those out of there. And we're going to let this continue to cook and keep an eye on it. And then eventually what happens is the stuff that's settled to the bottom will literally begin to burn. This is a controlled burn, kind of like our creme brulee, right? We are in control of this. We're going to keep an eye on it, and then eventually it will start to darken in its color as it cooks through. And like I said, the flavor, if you've never had it, it's, I would say nutty. Definitely a nutty, earthy flavor to it, to a brown butter. Something that you don't see too often on a lot of restaurant menus these days. Some of your more higher end restaurants might have it. So we're right about where we want it. I'm going to try my best to show you this. Excuse me. So it's the little bitty pieces that end up at the bottom, that sink to the bottom, that allow us to do this. Because they burn, and then in essence they flavor the rest of the liquid that's in that pot. So let's see if we can get that in the light just right. So you can see it's brown, clearly, right? But it is absolutely delicious. I'm going to let it go just a little longer to really get those parts in. Let's give that a little taste. The finger. Give it the Kwong test. All right. So now we have our brown butter. We're going to saute the ravioli in that when we get to the plate up part of this meal. We've got the oven cranked up to 400 degrees now. The mushrooms are out. They're sitting off to the side cooling. See if that's cool enough to not burn me. And we're going to scrape these little crunchies off of here. Okay, that's going to be the topper for our dish, all right? So, remember, we've got the mushrooms went in at 300. I left them in there for about 20 minutes, I guess it's been, since those went in. Like I said, your oven's going to probably be a little bit different. Just keep an eye on them, and you'll be just fine. We've got the butternut squash going into the oven at 400 degrees. We're going to put that in. It'll probably take about 15 minutes on the size that I cut. We're looking for a lot of color. Remember, it's going into a liquid. It's going to be boiled, so it doesn't have to be tender. However, if you don't have a blender or something to help you to blend this to smooth, you might want to let them cook a little longer. That way, when you can hit them with a whisk once they're in the pot and get it to where we want on the consistency. All right, so get those in the oven. To get started on this soup, while we've got the squash in the oven, we're gonna go in. This is going with a little bit of olive oil. I'm gonna use a cup of onion. All right, so that was like half, just under half of the whole onion that I had there. And we're gonna let that go while I get the celery ready to go. I am trying to get a little color. on the onion. I want to caramelize that, right? It'll bring out the natural sweetness of the onion. So let that go for just a bit. All right, in the meantime, I'm going to get some celery cut up. And where did I put the trusted garlic? Oh yes, this too will receive just a hair of garlic, not a lot, since we've got it going into the ravioli. Okay. Already starting to get some color on that. That's outstanding. We're going to wait to go in with everything else so we get a really good amount of color on that. So get that steam out of y'all's face there. Still got a little PTSD of putting that camera close to the pot, so I'm sorry I can't zoom in. I'm scared. I'm just scared. Okay. Now, something to think about that I guess I didn't mention in the beginning. We've got to cook the ravioli. We're going to saute it, right? We're going to saute it in the brown butter. We have to cook it first. So when we get there, you're going to need a pot of a lightly salted boiling water to cook off the ravioli. Now, the size of the ravioli, that's all on you. You can go with little mini pieces that are, little bitefuls like a can of Chef Boyardee. You can go with the oversized, one piece of ravioli set in the broth and do it that way. It's really up to you. I'm going to go with a plastic square there. Just one of the first ones that I grabbed. We're going to cut up a bunch of them, get them all together. I'll probably freeze half of it, and then we'll use some for the rest of this dish. All right, so now we're getting what we want on the color of those onions. Remember, it's all about building layers, right? Now I'm going to go in with my celery, roughly about, let me see if that's about a cup. I don't want to lie to you guys. Let me see. Yeah, man. We'll see if we can get the rest of that in there. Is that a cup? It really is a cup. Boom. There we go. A cup of celery. And we're going to go in with that little bitty spoon that I had. I told you I don't know what that size that is. We're going to, oh, I knew I was going to do it. We're not going to leave that out. Let's leave that in there. We're humans, right? All right. I told y'all I was scared. Scared of that thing for a reason. No worries, no worries. Let's get corrected. Okay. Boom, back on it. So we're gonna go in with that little spoon of the garlic. I would say it's probably like, I don't know, a half a teaspoon. That's it, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just to say we did it. Okay. Good stuff right there. Oh, it smells so good, you guys. It smells so good. All right, at this point, we're going to go in with our single bay leaf. Just one. It's a small one, but there you go. And once we give the celery some time to do its thing in there, we're going to go and add our 2 cups of veggie broth, right? So we have 2 cups of vegetable broth as well as 2 cups of heavy cream, but we'll wait until the very end to add that heavy cream. Might have gotten too small a pot, not gonna lie to you guys. Alright, so we're going with the veggie stock. Okay. And we're going to let this basically just simmer, right? So I'm going to turn this heat down just a hair. We don't want it on a full rolling boil. We just want it to chill. So very excited about this. A wonderful individual gifted us, blessed us with a brand new pasta roller. If you remember from our last pasta video, I am missing the clamp for my countertop one. Makes it very difficult to roll out pasta. This bad boy attaches to the mixer, so it takes a lot of the elbow grease out of it. All right, so remember when we use these things, whether you have a countertop or whatever it is you're using, always want to open that dial to the largest opening first when we start to roll that dough out. And you want to try to get the dough to room temperature. Now I'm hitting that with a little bit of flour. Flour I consider to be the lubrication of the baking world. Well, and butter, I guess, oil, you know, and everything else that's slick. But anyway, we're going to turn the mixer on to the lowest setting, and then we're going to start feeding the pasta through it until we get to the, and we're going to just keep passing this thing through to where we want to get it, like I said again, to the thickness that we're looking for. I also went ahead and dusted the countertop as well, because we're going to end up laying that pasta out on the countertop. So, oh, that is gorgeous. Look, both hands. All right. Now that's the first pass through, and on this one, that is the number 7. So you can see how thick that still is. And we're going to take that down to the 6. Oh no, don't do that. Don't worry, if that happens and your dough starts to stick together, that's what the flour's for. You just hit it with a little bit of flour, keeps it from sticking. All right, now we're gonna drop down to 5. We're gonna go again. And working with pasta, whether you're doing ravioli or spaghetti, linguine, you're gonna need some counter space, all right? If you're in a smaller kitchen, you don't really have that countertop space, maybe you wanna clear off some space on that kitchen table, all right, and do it there. Because as you can see, as you start doing it, you're going to need that extra room to work. All right, we're going to take it down to 4. I think 4 will put us where we want to be on our thickness. We don't want it to be too thin or it'll be really hard to work with later on. And obviously we don't want it too thick because it will be terrible in our mouths. Pause. Oh, this thing is outstanding. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to try to keep this part a little bit brief for you, all right? So, because I don't want to be wasteful, right? All right, so I got that cut off. Let's get back to this soup. Full disclosure, I think I let it go a little too far on the simmer. Okay, we safely got that into the pot and not the... Just wanted to show y'all where we were. So I've been let that go for about 5 minutes. All right, I know it's been a long one. Plate up for this, very, very simple, right? Nothing. All right, y'all.